Good morning, everybody. Please keep enjoying your bacon and eggs. Carl and I woke up not early enough, I guess, this morning to start frying that bacon and scrambling those eggs. We do hope you enjoy it. I'm John Griggs with Synovus Bank, your chair of the Chamber Board of Directors. I'm excited to welcome you to the very first breakfast briefing. Like the title, catchy, right? Breakfast briefing. This was formerly the Issues Forum. We used to have it at the flagship campus for the Richland Library. We do want to thank those folks. That was a great venue, but we're excited to be here as well. So this is just an opportunity for you to network. You've had about 45 minutes this morning to do that. Network with your fellow Columbia folks. Learn about issues that are affecting our region. And share good news over a hot breakfast, right? Better late than never, I always say. I want to thank everybody for coming today. I want to thank the Chamber Board of Directors. Would you stand if you're on the Chamber Board real quick? Thank you for coming this morning. Thank you for being here. We're excited to kick this off today, and I do want to welcome Poonam Patel, External Affairs Director for MUSC, who's our sponsored message this morning. Thank you.
Good morning. Like John said, I am Poonam Patel, External Affairs Director for the Medical University of South Carolina, also known as MUSC. And we are so excited to be here. On August 1st, 2021, we acquired the downtown location of what that was formerly known as Providence Hospital, northeast location. We're also located in Kershaw and Fairfield. And so we're excited to be here. When we started our journey here a little over a year ago, we said that we wanted to start with a foundation of trust. And we knew that we needed to start that relationship with the Columbia Chamber. And over the last year, they have been so welcoming. They've allowed us opportunities to network, to given us platforms to speak and share, and really allowed us the opportunity to thrive. So we're so thankful for this partnership, and we're grateful for the opportunity to be the presenting sponsor for the Breakfast Briefing series this year. Thank you. And so I know we're short on time. So without further ado, I will transition it to Carl for the legislative panel.
Thank you. Do I need to switch one to right and left? Does it matter? Good morning. Thank y'all again for being with us, and I want to really thank our fabulous guests today. Well, maybe not fabulous, but our special guest. Anyway, Representative Micah Caskey from District 89, right across the river, and Todd Rutherford, the Democratic Minority Leader, District 74. By the way, Micah's been in, this has started his 8th session, and Todd, fourth session, 8 years. Sorry. Todd is like 22 years, 24 years, which is impressive. But he got elected when he was 10. But anyway, so last year during we were doing online stuff, and these two were kind enough to join me online to do a little talk about the session. And the session kicked off yesterday, by the way. Happy Inauguration Day for South Carolina. The governor gets inaugurated today at noon. But so anyway, they were kind enough to come back and have a little chit chat on what's going to happen in the session, tone and tenor, what we expect. And you get the raw, unfiltered version today in live in person. So with that, thank you all for being here. Let's kick it off. Todd. First, let me turn that on. What do we think? I'm going to start in reverse of what I normally do. What do you think the top 3 issues will be for you this year?
education, economic development, and trying to make sure that the State House stays moored in place, which right now is kind of doubtful.
All right, well, let's dig into that. So, because education's big.
Economic development is
It's
big.
huger.
And they tie it
right,
together.
right. A bush isn't there. Talk about what do you think education?
I think that the House in particular, starting with Speaker Jay Lucas, who a couple of years ago decided that he was going to really focus on education and dig into how to fund it and how to fund it better. And he and a number of Democrats, and myself included, tried to look at funding formulas and make sure that our schools and our children were getting as close to what they need as possible. And I say that because having done this for as long as I have, I can tell you that that is a moving target and it is somewhat elusive. And it is a great deal dependent on things that are out of the state's control, more in the county's control. And it's one of those things where as much as you try to hit the target, you'll miss. And you just have to keep trying every year to hit the target and move and move and move because the needle continues to move. I've said for years that I think we need year-round schools in South Carolina. Not because I want my kids to be in school all the time, but because kids and all over the world are in school all the time. They looked at the American model years ago and decided they could do better, and they started to do better, and we've got to keep up. Because unless we educate our kids, we can't bring economic development to South Carolina to tie in together. And as long as they tie in together, which they always will, we've got to make sure that we put education first.
Okay, thank you. All right. Micah, to recap, it was education.
So you get a microphone, or do I get the whole?
Yeah, let's do that. Education, economic development, and something about keeping the rails on.
Yes.
What do you think the top three things are going to be?
I think it would add to the list.
Do you agree with that list?
I don't think it's wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question education, you know, if your priorities are where you put your money, our state budget says that our top priority is education, and the effort to improve that will continue. I don't know that I foresee any, you know, definitive results or tangible results, but you know, we got a lot of cooks in the kitchen, so we'll continue there. Economic development will be a principal item that the House Republican caucus looks to move forward. I think Speaker Earl Smith is committed to that. He has, and we'll make that a priority. What exactly that looks like or anything looks like, I don't know. It is a weird year. We can talk about that and what that actually means. But I think economic development, I think the other reality is, thanks to our friends in the courts, we have a number of challenges that we're going to have to address that we probably, I would not have even thought of 2 weeks ago, whether that's redistricting or abortion, part 30, whatever we're at. So yeah, I think those are also going to be pressing issues.
All right, so you touched on it, so keep that mic, because this is a strange year for those that don't, for you normal people that don't really spend the whole time thinking about the back ends of the State House. This year we have a new speaker. Earl Smith was elected just a couple of months ago. Jay Lucas, the previous speaker, stepped down, and so Jay was elected. I think there are two leadership positions on the Republican side that have not changed from last year, which is unheard of. I mean, that's typically, you got Tommy Pope as majority leader, you got Bill Sandifer as chair, Speaker Pro Tem, and then Bill Sandifer with LCI committee. Everybody else has a new position. So other than the obvious of people learning new roles and recognizing they're in a different position, then you have Republicans that won in a landslide this election cycle. They've got a super majority. They're sitting right now with 88 seats out of 124, which is 75%. So you got a super majority. Never happened before. So that's some of the background of the craziness, I think. And you've got three caucuses basically within the Republican caucus. There are multiple, but you've got three. You got.
We have at least 88 different caucuses.
So you got the Family Caucus, Freedom Caucus, and you got Mainstream Republican Caucus for the most part, right?
Well, sure.
Go with it. So how is that gonna play? I mean, you don't have a crystal ball, anything can happen, but the thought is it makes Merle's life a little more complicated.
I think there's no doubt that, more isn't necessarily better in terms of streamlining thoughts and deciding on a course of action. I mean, you would never, for example, engineer a system where you needed speed of action to have all these various committees and groups that have to reach consensus. I don't know.
Some of you don't like what you're saying.
Thank you. So anytime you've got to work with different people, it adds another dynamic. I think having an unprecedented number of members in one party, in the Republican Party, and State House means that processes are more convoluted. Processes will be delayed as we try to incorporate all the different opinions. So I don't know that it's a new challenge. It's just, new faces in that way.
Pass that to Todd. Todd, how do you see this as being the leader of the Democratic Party this year with all those nuanced changes?
Well, yeah, I think most people are surprised to see that the bulk of the votes, especially in the House, are as close to unanimous as you can get. The speaker has enjoyed a good relationship going back years with Democrats. And so those things that we truly need for South Carolina, those are unanimous votes, except for a few Republicans. And so now those few Republicans that have voted against the budgets, that have voted against education, that have voted against everything, those few are growing in number, and that begins to be the problem. It does not take much to recognize that South Carolina has done very well during the pandemic. We've done well since in terms of the amount of money that we have. And our job as Democrats, work with the speaker, Republicans that are like-minded to continue to move South Carolina forward, whatever that takes. And there are those that get elected, and they're all in his party at this point, that are coming down to Columbia to burn it down and to their stated mission, stop Merle Smith, to stop the rhinos, to stop the progress that we're making. And that is their entire mission. And our job is to make sure fail. And so that's what I started off with, to make sure that we keep the State House moored, because they literally want to burn it down.
I got my back.
One of the things I would add is I can appreciate the reductivist tendency to say that it is just there's three groups and that's it, right? That's a very cable news way to talk about it. It feels good, it's comfortable, but the reality is that most of the issues we have to deal with in the State House are not the sexy Republican versus Democrat issues. Some notable exceptions: abortion, guns, but most of the issues we deal with at the State House lend themselves to different types of rivalry or conflict rather than just outright partisan labels. I think most of the fights we have are urban versus rural, Charleston versus everybody. And these are the sort of bread and butter issues that we have to deal with most. They just don't get any headline coverage, whether that be in our Lexington or our pay-for-play blogs.
You bring up a good point on some of, because a lot of the headline issues are not manufactured, but obviously some day-to-day stuff that y'all do a ton of work throughout the session. None of it gets reported on except the big ticket items. And so, but you're talking the majority stuff doesn't get the headlines. But one of the big things here, y'all both mentioned this, is the judicial races, especially after the actions of the last week with the Supreme Court, one on abortion and on the redistricting of the congressional district down. What does that mean going forward? Because you've got one Supreme Court race this year and one next year, and multiple races coming up in February. What does that do to judicial races and the appointment of justices going forward?
I think we are in a new era. is a reality of decisions that are made on the national and the state level. I mean, I think it's something akin to where football, college football is today, and the NIL era is different than where we were a year or 2 years ago. I think we are into an era where we as a state are politicizing every judicial race. I think that decisions are being made for criteria that were not certainly not overtly stated, but decisions for judicial races will increasingly look like what it looks like in Washington. And I think that is to all our shared detriment. And I'm trying to do what I can to forestall that, but I think that the horizon says that we are going to abandon the constitutional construct of a legal system, meaning that, sometimes principles and rights mean you arrive at an unpalatable result, that the law requires something that you don't, law enforcement doesn't comply with the requirements for a search warrant. That evidence is then suppressed and the bad guy goes free. That's what constitutional governance requires. And we need judges to protect those rights. And if our judges are beholden to a public that, quite frankly, only wants to hear its preferred outcome, then we're at a loss. And I think we are headed that way. And I think that's a negative.
I could not agree more. And by the way, I only showed up this morning to hear Micah talk. I truly, truly enjoy him, and he is one of the best and brightest that we have over there. And to show you how messed up the system is, he just barely won his election, his primary. Despite, but it's disturbing because we get talent, and then talent is quickly drawn back in by people that, again, don't mean the best for South Carolina. And so as far as our judges go, most of you know, if you've seen the newspaper, our system in South Carolina is different. We elect judges the way that they do in Virginia somewhat, which is the General Assembly chooses judges. Our system allows that someone who has never donated to a political party, who is not friends with the governor or anyone else, someone that simply meets the qualifications, they're a lawyer, they're in good stead, they've been doing it for 8 years, they apply and become a judge, and those persons actually do make it through. That is under attack by those that, as Micah stated, like to control the outcome rather than you would assess as a constitutional construct. And because it's under attack, those of you that are sitting idly by watching going, oh yeah, the legislature doesn't need all that power. They don't need to pick their judges. Just wait till you get what other states get, which is corruption, judges getting indicted, people taking money, judges taking money, all those things that we have in other states that South Carolina has avoided because of the system that we have. Ours is an old way to do it, but it is the best way in the country that anybody has found. And so I, for one, will be trying to make sure, like Micah, that we continue to do it that way, but it's just, we seem to be losing our grasp to those that want the outcome to be what they want it to be rather than what the Constitution said it should be.
Thanks. All right, switching to a little different. We are a business group. We have business issues in mind, and businesses like big business and little business, don't matter. Like consistency. We like kind of predictability. Some of that work with a balanced system. I would argue we don't have a balanced system. We hadn't had a balanced system in a while where the Republicans control everything, and it's good in some ways and bad in other ways. Todd, your party got, a shellacking, if I can say that, this year, surprisingly. So what's got to change for the Democratic Party to regain traction in the state?
I think a lot of it was in this go around, we had candidates that we knew were not doing what they were supposed to do. And they unfortunately had the moniker of being Democrats, but the reality was even the Democrats knew that they weren't campaigning, they weren't raising money, they weren't doing what they needed to. And I believe that those are a number of seats that we can get back in 2 years. The tragic part is that, as you stated, without that balance, I don't think that the Republican Party is doing what they need to do to move business forward. I've talked for years in front of this group and other business groups about over-regulating small business, making it so that small businesses that do their best to have a dream and turn that dream into reality and turn that into dollars are met with regulations and burdens that they never saw coming that continue to rob them of their dreams. And when you're one party that's not necessarily worried about the other party, then you don't really care about those because your job is to keep getting elected and keep increasing your numbers rather than focusing on those things that we all know. And I argue with my city and my county about all the time that are stopping business from moving forward. I tell people all the time, because people always talk about being an entrepreneur. I'm like, that is awesome, right up until you hire your first employee. And then you will see what it really means to be an entrepreneur. And then if you try and rent a space and you run into zoning, you will really see what it means to be an entrepreneur. And all these dreams and all these things that you thought you were going to do turn into this nightmare of, my God, I rented this place. Now zoning tells me I can't open and I have to get the special exception. I have to do this and I have to paint the building blue rather than pink. I mean, all these things that stop government from moving forward. And so I can tell you that there's been a collective mission, Democrat and Republican, to try and make sure that businesses in South Carolina, not just the Boeings and BMWs, but small businesses have the tools that they need to make it. And that's what we're going to continue to do.
Thanks. While I got you, we had, speaking of the party, we had a defection yesterday. Very visible defection. What does that mean? Are others going to follow, or is that just a one-off?
I think that, and I'll give you the nuts and bolts of it. So the bulk of the voters in South Carolina still are straight party ticket voters. They walk in, they push Democrat, they walk in, they push Republican. It is very difficult in South Carolina because we're not Vermont for an independent to win. And I would assume that a sitting senator knows that, but I don't want to make any assumptions in this case. I may be wrong, but if they know that, then, and they move to be an independent, it may be for some reason other than politics. As I said last night, you know, the Democratic Party in South Carolina is not this monolith that you've got the head of it that's deciding policy for everybody in the party. The Democratic Party in a senator's district is pretty much the senator. I mean, they kind of control what the party does and where the party goes. So the statements about the Democratic Party not caring about women, not caring about Black women, it's not only off base, it's just emphatically wrong. But so to make that statement as you step away from the party that you run in, I believe requires you at this point to resign your seat and run as what you say you are now, rather than claiming that your voters are going with you and your constituents are going with you and they're all going, I'm not doing that. I'm not an independent, I'm a Democrat. So speak for yourself. And I think that she should speak for herself. And anyone that claims to run in one party, and we signed a pledge, we're going to run, this is what we do, we get the resources. And then when we don't win, we get mad, we take all our toys and go home and claim that we're taking a big group with us. That big group ought to be able to decide whether they're going with her or not. But that being said, I think it's a cry for help, honestly. I don't know what it is. I can't explain it. And God bless her.
For those in the dark, we had a state senator in in Columbia, Mia McLeod, resigned from the Democratic Party and is listed as independent as of yesterday. And so former gubernatorial candidate. So thanks for that, Todd.
No, we got to hear Micah say.
Oh.
It's certainly $10 not to have to I just wanted to make clear to anybody, if you have not found a home in the Democratic Party, we would love to have you. Come on over, we're Big Tent. And if you're having trouble with regulations or business licensing or zoning, have I told you about West Columbia? About Casey, the rest of House District 89.
That was my last question for y'all today on regionalism. Y'all, from a business perspective, we appreciate the House and what y'all have done to invest in infrastructure. We're seeing that abounds in Richland County, in Lexington County with Malfunction Junction, Blossom Street Bridge, 378 over in Sumter. We're going to see Elmwood changes. So lots of money has been flowing through this region, which is going to help infrastructure. So we appreciate that. What other things can y'all help us with? Or what else do you think from your visual, from your standpoint? We know we need tax relief on Richland side, and we're working on that. Joe Taylor, rest of the soul, was working on that. We know we're gonna need some help there. What else?
And you're working on that.
I'm
This is-
absolutely.
I don't have a conversation. I had a conversation with Overture Walker last night, Chair of County Council. We were talking about tax relief. And of course, your name came up and the conversation they've had. What most people don't realize and what most counties are not burdened with are all of the untaxed property in Richland County. The University of South Carolina, now MUSC, every time you see Prisma Health as a nonprofit, open up another building somewhere, they don't pay taxes on that building. USC doesn't pay taxes. The state, the city, the federal government don't pay taxes on all these buildings, and so who makes up that tax break right there? The people that live in Richland County, people that live in the city of Columbia. The number of legislators that live outside of the area that buy a house here when they get elected and they get their first tax bill, they sell their house because they never could imagine taxes would be this high. One of the things that I've started to look at is whether the state could at least pay their property tax burden to the city, to the county for all of the property that they have here. Because at some point, it's not fair to those of us that live in the city, live in the county, and complain about it, to constantly benefit from all the state offices that we have here in the USC, but not realize, not recognize the drag that they can have on the resources that the city and county have. And so that's something that we've got to start looking at. You hear a lot in the paper about our projects and pet projects for legislators, and the paper loves to blast them. And then a couple of months later, they start writing about how great all these pet projects are because they're actually moving the needle without all the processes that you would see in the city and the county. And I can tell you, I am so excited about William Street and developing the city waterfront, which we've never had. That there is money to do a greenway, the same thing you would see in Atlanta with the Beltline, to go from Finley Park by bike or walking without having to deal with traffic all the way around to the Clyburn Golf Center. These are things that we're able to do with pet projects. We're going to improve the cemetery. There's a slave cemetery out near the lake that a church is doing some research on, trying to figure out how the slave cemetery was impacted by the development of the lake. There are all these things that we've been able to do with these pet projects that everybody loves to hate until they love them. And so I think that what you're going to see moving forward is an impact on this city that you will like, that will be someplace that you can be proud of, and it's going to be driven by what we're able to do as well. Thank you. At the state house, I'm sorry, I say Columbia, like I talked to another dude.
I'll just add to that, a lot of what has happened in the last couple of years in terms of bringing state dollars into our region has been the function of work from Todd and others here, because, I'm happy to make, jokes about God's side of the river over there and, but I say it in jest, but it's also emblematic of a real challenge we have here in the Midlands, which is that we don't bridge the divide very well. And that's to our detriment relative to consolidated areas, groups that can come together, Greenville, Spartanburg, foremost among them, and Charleston. They have historically shown that, at least at the legislative level, that they can organize themselves to advocate for themselves and then receive the allocations from that. That's something we've struggled with in the Midlands, and it's not helped when we elect folks who want to burn it all down. And if I could just jump on my soapbox for half a minute, what I would say to each of you is if you did not vote in your preferred primary, it's a Republican or Democrat primary, in June, you are part of the problem. You are ceding that decision-making authority to people who are increasingly fervent in their desire to just say, the hell with it, I'll burn it all down. Now, I'm not saying you have to rededicate your lives to the study and following of state politics, but if you believe that your business is going to be successful and you want to see that happen, then I would suggest to you that you need to be involved in paying attention to your lawmakers. It is not a fait accompli as to who is going to win. I happen to have a very close election this last time, but I share this admonition, that notwithstanding. It is imperative that civil, smart people get engaged in the process, that is exercising your right to vote, that is donating and funding campaigns and candidates where you find a certain affinity, but otherwise just give a damn. Because if you don't, others are doing it, and it is not to the good.
And
Rob.
exactly. Let me add to that, because this is Columbia, so we don't tend to get what they're getting in Horry County, what they're getting in Beaufort County, what we're getting in Lancaster. when you see up north, these people that are so angry with government that they decide they're gonna retire to South Carolina, they come down here in droves, and they don't have any children in school, so they don't give a damn about school. They are on a fixed income, it's their retirement, their pension that they're getting from New York or Connecticut, wherever it is, and they are not caring about taxes except that they need to be lowered, and they don't care about their representative because they are here to take over the system. They are not South Carolinians, and so they're not nice. They don't say things like yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. They literally stand up and scream, and not at Democrats, because we're not even there anymore. Scream at Republican members and conservative Republican members that are all of a sudden not conservative enough because they don't agree with this new crop that came from New York that don't want to do this, don't want to do that. And you need to make an appointment to come and talk to us. And it is literally, when you look at the rest of the state, we are getting worse and worse and worse. And they do not care about anything that has to do with South Carolina. They only want to make sure that the government works for them and they're the loudest voice in the room. And they get 10 of their friends together, all of whom just moved here. And they're going to control the system. And because so many of us, like Micah said, aren't engaged in the process, they're able to do just that. And if it doesn't scare you, it's because you're not paying attention. Because I'm telling you, you'll look at Myrtle Beach and you will see nothing but people from out of state now running that government. And if they're not running it because they're elected, they're running it because they're getting the resources together, get those South Carolinians out of office so they can put their people in. It is happening time and time again. We're a beautiful state. Matter of fact, we're the most beautiful state. That makes us attractive, but we're not Florida. Our weather is warm year round. And so we get those people that can't afford to move all the way to Florida. They come here and they are going to have their voices heard at the expense of most of you in this room.
No offense to anybody that moved to here from. We really are blessed, but not only do we have a ton of natural resources and great businesses here, but we also got these two representing us at the State House. So thank y'all both for being here today. Thank you for what you do and your representation for us. But we appreciate you and all the work that you put in, your families put up with. So thank you very, very much. Give them a round of hands. They've got business to do today, so if they need to leave, feel free, but we appreciate
Inauguration today.
inauguration day, so I know y'all got other things to do, so thank y'all very much. I'm also going to turn it over to Macon Lovelace, our chair of our public policy committee. Macon, you'll come up and present the agenda. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good morning, everybody. And Todd, while you're on the way out, my parents live in Wake County, so you're spot on about that. Again, as Carl mentioned, I'm Macon Lovelace, Trinity Partners, happy to serve again as this year's public policy chair. And really excited for the change in venue. Credit to Carl and his staff. I think Susan called me back in the fall and said, we want to run this idea by you. And I said, great. I think that we need to change the venue and a lot of new faces. We were usually getting about 80 or 90 people on a good event at the library. So having this sold out is very effective, and appreciate everybody's time and attention. If y'all look on your table, you'll see the this year's agenda for public policy, and a lot of the same items we've had in the past, but just touching on advocacy for legislative public agendas. I think y'all, I can speak, having been on the board for 2 years now, you don't realize how effective Carl's staff is at tracking all this. For example, Henry and Susan, or Henry's particularly tracking stuff at the State House. Susan calls me, she's been at Richland County meetings, City of Columbia meetings. They're seeing some of the executive summaries. So we're getting, our dollars are being put to good use by them being present and making us aware of things, because it could be a danger or detriment to the business community. So I want to recognize them, but also just to point out to you all that, we're going to continue to work on education, workforce development, continue to engage with the military. Some of y'all may attend some of the military events, but they're very well done. If you ever want to attend one, please feel free to. You're going to see a big push from the chamber to continue with, you hear about job recruitment, retention. We're gonna make a big push to continue to collaborate with the Ford as you have people coming up for retirement. My company has one, a great example of a gentleman that is retired, his wife is still at Fort Jackson working for us. They love South Carolina, they want to stay here. We need to keep more people like that here in the community. But I think that everybody thinks of we are a business development entity and pro-business, but a lot of that fall is the public policy and tracking things that are happening in the state legislature here locally. And y'all don't realize how valuable the chamber staff is at doing that. So I'd like to recognize Susan and Henry and Carl and all their efforts in doing everything, and appreciate y'all coming today.
Team effort, team effort. Speaking of team effort, thanks to our sponsor today, MUSC. Very, very helpful, but we also have a great partner in Blue Cross Blue Shield, so it's my privilege to ask Steve Pageant to come up and for a second, talk about Blue Cross Blue Shield. Thank you very much. That's right.
I originally was told I had 30 seconds, and I think Carl just said I was had 2 seconds. So thank y'all so much for being here this morning, and it's always great to have a spirited debate about what makes South Carolina great. And one of the things that we talked about is business and business development and small business. And Blue Cross has partnered with the chambers around the state, and especially here in Columbia, to develop those relationships with small business. Here's a pop quiz, audience participation. How many businesses in South Carolina, percentage-wise, are less than 50 employees? They're out of number. 95. 80%. In South Carolina, it's about 84.5%. In the Columbia area, it's a little bit higher than that. And so when you think about small business, less than 50 employees, that's what drives the economy. Yes, we hear the big, I thought it was interesting, we talked about the big ticket items around that come out of the State House. The same thing happens in business and business development. We think of the Michelins and the BMWs coming to South Carolina, but it's all of those small and mom and pop operations that are really what drives South Carolina and make it what it is, such a great place to live and work. We touched on retention and employees. One of the 2 biggest retention tactics that businesses are using right now is to offer quality health insurance. And Blue Cross is committed to providing options and plans to those small businesses that haven't been there in the past. So if you have a small business, 2 to 50 employees, or you are working for one of those large companies that has more than 50 employees, when it's time to look for health insurance, look for your local plan, look for Blue Cross. We're here in South Carolina. We go to church with you. We listen to our legislators debate things. We go to the soccer fields and we attend those travel baseball games, but we're home. This is where we are based. You can pick up the phone and reach someone in an office in South Carolina that's committed to being at home and providing for the citizens of South Carolina. So I encourage you, look at Blue Cross when it comes time from a health insurance standpoint. Whether you think your business is too small or not, I promise you, there's a plan that goes to even 2 or possibly even 1 employee from the group. So thank y'all very much for coming out and giving me hopefully more than 30 seconds, but I really do. It's great to see everyone in the room. But thank y'all so much for continuing to make South Carolina and Columbia such a great place to live and work. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Ashley Connor, Vice President of Development for the Chamber. We're glad you're here. Someone said that breakfast was held up by a train this morning. I don't know, but in the future, we do plan to have breakfast available just after 7 and have our program start probably at 7:30. So I sure hope you're enjoying our new breakfast platform. This new breakfast briefing sure does have grit. Our old format without breakfast is toast. It wasn't our representatives. Excellent. Now that my bad breakfast puns are out of the way, thank you, Stephen, for your update on open enrollment. If you would like additional information on health insurance plans with Blue Cross Blue Shield or any of our other value partner programs, such as office supplies and shipping, just please reach out. I would like to take a moment to introduce you to some of our most recent partners, new partners that are in the room. For the sake of time, I'm going to call your name if you'll stand. 1-800-PLUMBING, Opta Pharmaplasma, Equipment Share, iHeartMedia, Victory Family Medicine, Ride Jaunt, Dilmar Oil, Network in Action, Amarok, Cool Care Heating and Air, Red Rock Developments, Riverbank Zoo and Garden, The Seals, THS Constructors, Combined Insurance, Philanthropy, and Comfort Keepers. If you see these folks on your way out, please give them a warm chamber welcome. Our Diplomat Link program is a program that provides outreach with our partner businesses throughout the year. Diplomats are our ambassadors that act as an extension of chamber staff through the community. Our diplomats are incentivized by gaining points for events they attend and touch points they make. This invaluable tool for the chamber also helps diplomats grow in their own business by making connections and building relationships. Diplomat of the Quarter is awarded to the diplomat who has the most accrued points during the quarter throughout the year. The diplomat of the first quarter for September, October, and November is Ann Thompson with ERA Wilder Realty. Come on up. You can join Carl on the side of the stage, if you don't mind. We also want to celebrate our Partner of the Month, which is chosen internally to spotlight the Chamber's partners who have shown great efforts in assisting the Chamber's mission to create and promote an environment where businesses can flourish in the region. For the last couple of years, we have been at Richland County Public Library for our monthly Issues Forum, and this new breakfast briefing is taking the place of Issues Forum. The library always had a nice warm welcome for the Chamber and our partners. Thank you for having us and going above and beyond as a partner in order for us to provide a platform to discuss and address local, regional, and federal issues facing our business community. Melanie Huggins and your team, Sarah, please come up. You can join Carl on the side of the stage if you don't mind. Thank you so much. And thank you to our Changemaker sponsor, MUSC again. Thank you all for being at our inaugural breakfast briefing. We hope to see you next month on February 8th, where we'll hear an update on SCDOT. Y'all have a great morning.